Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we are excited to welcome a brand that we've heard about but haven't tried yet. The little sister of Dalmore, right? Little brother, little sister, the other side of the Dalmore family, Jura. Does that work, Mike?
That's a great introduction. It's a great introduction for any single malt to be known. It's a little anything compared to the Dalmore.
No, but look, Jura stands on its own. It's a fantastic whiskey, and we're going to get to try it today. We're going to hear all about the history, all about the brand, and we're going to try a few fantastic expressions. We have 5 delicious pours in front of us. So we have a great group of people joining us today to try these with us. And joining us on the brand side is Mike, whose last name I will not butcher. So we're excited. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. As always, this is an interactive presentation. This is an interactive tasting. Make sure you ask questions. Make sure you participate, chat, or unmute yourself and do that. David Donahue is the president of the Los Angeles Whiskey and Spirits Guild, and he's on the call with us today. David, do you want to say a couple words?
Thank you very much, Vadim. Mike, really great that you're here. Thank you for working with Vadim to bring us this event. I've not had Jura before, so I'm really looking forward to it. And as always, Vadim, thank you for working with Mike to bring us something that maybe I'm probably in the minority of not having tried it, but these are and can be some of the most exciting virtual tastings where we do get to kind of dive into something that I haven't dove into before. So thank you, Mike, and thank you everybody for joining us here on a Friday night.
Thank you, David. Yep. So welcome. We're going to get started. I think everyone's here been here before. If you haven't, welcome. And Mike, floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Birkenheier. I'm the single malt specialist at White & Mackay in California and now Nevada as well. Basically, what does single malt specialist mean? I primarily handle the commercial side of White & Mackay right now. We are extremely small at White & Mackay. We have roughly 16 employees in all of the Americas. I am the only person doing this position in this time zone. I do have a gentleman named Craig Bridger who happens to live in California as well, but Craig is a keeper of the quake, so I'm not allowed to look at him in the eyes when I speak. I have to look down and walk away or bow out accordingly. However, we run a really small company, and when you get to smaller companies, we don't, I've worked for larger suppliers before and agencies before, but when we get to something smaller like how White & Mackay is, we kind of try and do everything from, I'm a brand ambassador in that I think everybody's a brand ambassador if you smile and you're happy and you believe in what you talk about. I handle a lot of the commercial side as well as some of the private client relationships. And today is really fun and special because I get to talk about a distillery that I feel is often overlooked, partly because of it being associated with the Dalmore. The Dalmore is such a giant brand right now that's growing huge. But there's something completely special, unique, and different about Jura Distillery, and I think everyone here is going to see that today. But before we get started, I just want to say, please, I like to run really loose presentations. I like to make sure that everyone can speak up when they want to speak up. Ask any question you want. You're probably going to be able to stump me on some stuff. I guarantee you, out of the 18 other people in here, most of you know more about everything about whiskey than I do, but I'll do my best to try and fake it until we make it. And then the second part, if we want to line up the expressions that we're going to have that I think we should have in order, I would say the first one we should start with is Jura Journey. And then the second one is the 21 year. The third, we should go into Jura 12, followed by Jura 18. And then we'll finish it off with 7 wood. I can explain as we go along, and I think as we get along, you'll see why I chose the order of these expressions in this order. So Jura is a distillery on an island on the west coast of Scotland. There's been a joke that they like to say a lot on the island that to the east, their neighbors are Scotland, and then to the west, their neighbors are New York City. Now, this is not a small island. A lot of people say a small island. This island is twice the size of Manhattan. However, the population is slightly less. There are about 6,212 residents. 212 of those are humans, 6,000 are red deer. The name Jura is Scotch Gaelic for Deer Island. This island is extremely hard to get to, as there's really only one reason to get there. To get to Isla, you can take a ferry that leaves multiple times a day. To get to Jura, you have to know somebody with a plane, know somebody with a helicopter, rent a boat, or take the ferry to Isla, go through Isla, get on another ferry, and then get to Jura. And once you get to Jura, you'll see that this is a very small, tiny island community that has one road, one pub, one hotel, and one distillery. Those 212 people, not all of them are directly involved with the distillery. However, as in times past, if the distillery was not there, there would be almost near depopulation of the island. The distillery founded in 1810, originally producing extremely smoky, peaty single malt, just like our Isla cousins. You know, that is the style of whiskey, as everyone knows, from that general area. And as time went on, multiple more people got involved with the distillery until eventually it fell out of favor in the early 1900s. You have to imagine, as it's the water between mainland Scotland and the island is extremely choppy. I was just in Scotland and just visited the distillery, and I saw people come in helicopters, but we took a boat. It was probably a 15-person boat with about 18 people on it, and it was not smooth sailing to get there. The only reason I mention that, not because I'm soft, I'm from the Illinois-Wisconsin border. I do not belong on water, but also imagine how hard it is to get grain there, to get the stills there, to get the stone there to build the original foundation and the wood. So when it did fall out of favor and people were not drinking Jura, or people were not really paying attention to the distillery, it fell out of favor. Nobody was there. The island nearly depopulated when the still stopped running. So much so that they just left the distillery to crumble. The roof caved in, destroyed everything that was there. In the early 1960s, the distillery was started up again. And in the style, when we as White Mackay took over this distillery, what we wanted to do was not produce a very peaty, smoky whiskey, but what we wanted to do is pay homage to what it used to be, and also be very friendly with our cousins from the other island. So the distillery, you're going there, you can see it forever. Again, it's twice the size of Manhattan. This is a very large island with almost no trees on it. It's very rough. It's the very idea of a Scottish island that you would think in your head if you've never been there before. When I was looking at it, I was like, there is nothing on that island. And then as you roll in and you're coming into the port, you'll see the Jura distillery. And right in front of the Jura distillery is the Jura Inn, which has the one pub in it. Now, every single person on this island knows everybody else in a very intimate way. I was regaled with stories of the police do not go to the island because they don't need to, as everybody kind of just handles the island on their own. If you show up to the island, you can get a job at the distillery. We could find something to do for you. You could probably stay at the inn. But there's not really anything else to do besides look at deer and drink some pretty cool single malt, which we'll get into momentarily. So in our distillery, we have 4 extremely large pot stills. These are some of the tallest stills in all of Scotland. At one time, we were the second tallest. I do not believe we are the second tallest stills any longer, but we're getting up close to Glenmorangie heights. So what we wanted to do was really constrict the stills at the top to really cause more reflux, because again, as the current styles of Jura that you're drinking, almost all of these are Sir Richard Patterson creations. So this is something very interesting for people who are big fans of Richard, people who are big fans of the Dalmore. you can kind of see a little more playful side in the Jura whiskeys than you can from something that he takes very, very seriously, which is the Dalmore. So we have these two large wash stills and these two large spirit stills. The new make spirit is extremely, it is structured and light, but it's also a constant that you're going to get from all of our new make spirit is orchard fruit. We always are seeking orchard fruit from our stills. Now, that only tells 11/12 of what we do, because 1 month out of every year, we do distill an extremely peaty, smoky single malt that we usually blend into the expressions that you're having here. So our signature, flavor profile, the DNA of Jura is orchard fruits, slightly sweet with a trail of smoke on the end. Now, this extremely peaty, smoky single malt is aged separately, is rested separately, is matured completely separately from the other spirit. So if, for instance, we try our 18-year later, that means we have to age a extremely peaty single malt for 18 years in the exact same way that we're aging our unpeated single malt for 18 years. And only at the end do we touch it together so that you get that slightly smoky, trail that we do at the end. Interesting factoid, if you look at the unique bottle shape of Jura, this is not simply a clever marketing ploy to have something that looks separate from everyone else's bottles. The waters around Jura are so rough that they were smashing bottles constantly during shipping. So they wanted to make sure that they had 2 points of contact with each bottle as they were shipping, which lowered the chances of these bottles breaking. Just a fun little fact about why we have our bottles in that shape. The waters are so rough so that we have the 5th largest whirlpool in the world right to the northern, it runs along the northern borders of Jura, called Corey Brecken. Corey Brecken is, I'm happy we didn't go through it, but they will take boats through it, and it is an absolute sight to be seen. As I don't know what the 1st largest whirlpool is, but the 5th largest is large enough for me to ask the captain to steer clear of it, but it is definitely something wild. So if you have this island that's covered in dense fog in, north of Isla, and already a country that has some pretty inhospitable weather and seas around it, then you add that whirlpool around there, and now you kind of understand why we think Jura is very special. There is absolutely nothing easy about making the whiskey there, about storing the whiskey there, aging the whiskey, or shipping it back to the mainland. While I was out there, some colleagues of ours were delayed 3 days because of weather. They could tell 3 days out that the sea was starting to get a little rough. And that is for some very important people. Now imagine grain shipments. When we make a lot of whiskey at a time, because we don't know when the next time we're going to necessarily be able to get supplies to make the next batch of whiskey. So you walk off the boat, you're probably greeted by some of the most friendly people you ever meet in your entire life. They don't really leave the island very often. They're really happy to see visitors. And you'll always see these giant red stag, these red deer roaming all around the countryside. And as you walk into the distillery, you'll notice that it is half new and half old. The foundation and certain parts of it pre-1960 that were saved, we kept. However, as time has progressed and the need to produce more whiskey, and also hedging bets against bad weather and being able to produce and store whiskey or lay down new make spirit, you can see that there are some new parts. So I think before I run out of breath here, I'm always a big fan of making sure that we get whiskey to lips as fast as we possibly can, right? That's why we all showed up on Friday at 7 o'clock. So I think that's a very important time for us to step into the Jura journey. So Jura journey, about, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, if you went and purchased a bottle of Jura, you would see names like Superstition. You would see, names very important to the island, but not really picking up the 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 whiskey drinking sophisticate were not really picking it up. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we decided to switch a majority of our productions to age statements, Journey not being one of them. Jura Journey is in fact a Total Wine and More exclusive. Um, Total Wine is a huge supporter of everything White Mackay does, especially Jura. But Journey is special, and the reason I wanted to start with this one is if anybody here is familiar with White Mackay, it's usually because of the Dalmore, and it's always about that double maturation, that triple maturation, wine casks, sherry bodega casks. And I really wanted the first two that we tried from here to show what our new make spirit will do after only seeing some time in American oak. And that is what Journey is. This is a single malt that sees none of that stereotypical White Mackay sherry cask or port finish or Château Marbruzet finish. This is second and third filled ex-bourbon casks. And this, I believe, is a great step into what we do on our island. You're going to get, obviously, with ex-bourbon, you're going to get some soft baking spices and vanilla, but I definitely do think that citrus is always going to be another one of those like tertiary flavors that you're going to find in a lot of our single malt from Jura, whereas the Dalmore is orange peel, orange blossom. This one is more lemon curd, lemon zest, lemon peel. The Journey is coming in retail. Again, don't quote me on retail because I don't really quote prices, but I was finding it currently online for $34.99 if you want to shop at Total Wine, and is coming in at 80 proof. I've heard this single malt being described as the go-to, right? There's two ways from a lot of whiskey drinkers I found like to approach their single malts. They either like to have their really nice single malts in the beginning of the day or their really nice single malts at the end of the day. And because I drink whiskey for a living, I generally want to have my nice stuff at the beginning of the day, and I want to sit down with some Jura Journey at the end of the day. It's still rich enough, it's still present enough, and it can be present at the end of the night just as much as it can be in the first place. So I think if we nose the Journey, I'm getting some lemon zest and vanilla, right? The bourbon casks are definitely very present in this single malt. Yeah, so the omnipresent trail of Jura is always going to be, in my opinion, smoked honey. It will always, at the end of the nose and at the end of the palate, will be a nice smoked honey. And I think when we have it on the palate, you'll see what I mean about the vanilla and then into smoked honey. Feel free, anybody, to call out anything that they find inside of this single malt on the palate.
I'm not getting any citrus. It's more of like an earthy, veggie, vanilla, butterscotch kind of thing for me.
No, yeah, a lot of that butterscotch is coming from the ex-bourbon. Yeah.
Yep.
No citrus. Oh, okay, interesting. Briny note. I see the briny note too, right? So as we get to, I mean, think about some of our cousins on Isla, Brulati and Port Charlotte. Port Charlotte putting their whiskey out so that it can get that great sea air, maritime experience. It's nearly impossible to avoid that on any of the islands, especially at Jura. There is no real wind block between the way the winds come across the island and the distillery. So you will get a little bit, but not really focusing too much on it, on some of those maritime expressions. What does anybody think? Please speak up. How does anybody feel about the Journey? Vadim, how do you feel?
It's delicious. It's a very easy first dram of the night. Nice and fruity, and just like you said, just a hint of smoke. So it's not overpowering.
Yeah, always a trail, right? Again, that's us paying respect to what we used to do at the distillery and not really only focusing on that. I love, I have to say Port Charlotte's probably one of my favorite single malts. However, we're not trying to fall in line as a lot of places that you go in the world, from Burlington, Vermont to Portland, and everyone was like, keep these small communities weird. They definitely want to be individuals on the island.
I think the fruitiness for me is not fruity, but it's like a Nutella, like the nuttiness.
Nutella, like a candied
No.
kind of confectionery.
Yeah, kind of like smooth cream, creamy,
Mhm.
smooth in the mouth. And then I guess the zing would be the citrus, like where it's that spice, that zing in the back of your throat kind of thing.
Well, so I like that you said that, because the next one we're going to go, I want to say that at first, the first time I ever tried it, I thought citrus, like a citrus kind of, the way citrus can sometimes prickle your taste buds. But I think it's interesting that the next one that we're going to get into, I'll kind of show my cards, that citrus is replaced with more of a black peppercorn. And the reason I picked the 21 as the second is because the 21 is a no wine cask and no sherry cask either. So when you go to the distillery, they have a small bar on the side and a tasting room. And again, in previous generations of the Jura, not even that long ago, superstition was a big one. It is Jura is rumored to be a haunted island. I don't know. I was only there for 4 hours, and maybe they didn't like people who smoke cigarettes, so they kind of stayed away from me. But the reason the 21 is named Tide, as there was a previous release that was called Time. And Time spent more time inside being aged, and Tide spent more time outside being rested and finished. And the Tide is going to be the second one. Why I think it's important to talk about Sir Richard Patterson and where the distillery is going is that everything that gentleman touches is very Richard forward, right? Richard is a big personality. He's very well respected. I was just at INF in Las Vegas, and we actually had to use Craig Bridger just to keep Richard on track and focused, as I saw people bowing to him in the hallways of the Wynn. And we should have sent 5 or 6 more employees, but it was just Craig and I and Richard. And by the way, that gentleman is one of the nicest people ever. He doesn't sign my checks, but in case he's tuning in right now, Richard, great French cuffs on the suit. But as Richard is now on his way to retirement, he has brought in, for the last 5 years, from Compass Box, Greg Glass. So Greg is now taking over, again, after studying under Richard for 5 years, a more of the role of the master blender. And it's funny, as Richard is the artist, Greg is definitely the mad scientist. And as we go through this, I'm going to be able to sit there and tell you, this has more Richard fingerprints on it, and this has more Greg fingerprints on it. And I think it's going to be pretty easy to tell. The one that we're coming up to now is Jura 21. The Tide is a more Greg expression, right? Greg absolutely loves oak, whereas Richard loves wine, and Richard loves cigars, and Richard loves coffee, and Richard loves whiskey and steaks and, double-breasted suits with pinstripes on it. Greg's whole entire focus in life is oak casks and different types of oak casks, which at the end of our tasting you'll definitely see. But the 21 is as well a Total Wine exclusive. I do believe I have not seen this anywhere else besides Total Wine. If you are seeing them out there, that means someone probably found a case that fell off of a truck somewhere, but I'm not the whiskey police. But the 21 is, I think, kind of special. I'm a sucker for when a distillery does something that it's not known for, right? When someone releases, I was a very early adopter of the White Dogs when they came out. I really love somebody who does a heavily peated single malt and then releases a no peat single malt. I don't know if I'm just easily swayed, but the 21 Tide is exactly what I'm describing from our distillery. 21 years in ex-bourbon casks, and then finessed in virgin American oak. This one is coming in at 46.7%. I found it online for $200. So we're talking about a 21-year-old single malt whiskey that's $200. There's a reason for that. The Dalmore is helping out Jura become slightly more approachable to everybody. Because of the success of the Stag, we are now allowed to really dump some resources into Jura, which you will see coming up in 2023. There will be a press in the market for us to really start talking about this great, great whiskey more. So the 21 to me is, and I don't like to talk about distillery terms because I've done enough whiskey, enough drammers clubs, enough whiskey clubs that there's some prickly people I might have met who have told me how much I don't know and how much more they know about me. But nose and taste really quick, and then I want to tell you what I feel about it because I don't want to try and alter your perception of what's in the glass.
What's really interesting is that on first nose, it smelled like a wine cask to me.
Yeah.
It was interesting hearing that there's no wine influence on this at all.
None. So the first two were to show that the distillery is committed to allowing the whiskey to sing a little bit without trying to really beef it up with some sherry or port casks or red wine casks. This one to me is black peppercorn with vanilla bean ice cream, right? You're going to get that, the richness and creaminess from 21 years in ex-bourbon, but then also slightly higher proof. It's going to come off a little bit spicy on the end, and then a little bit of orchard fruit with smoke slightly trailing off. This one has a little bit less smoke than a lot of my other expressions that we're tasting tonight.
This is like a smoky bourbon Scotch blend. Put it all in the
right. I love that, right? Because I think the way that I'm trying to talk about Jura right now is I don't know if there's, you know, able to bridge some gaps. Like some people are bourbon and some people are single malt, some people are mezcal and some people are tequila. That's just the way it goes, right? However, I think that there is a whole entire new generation of drinkers that weren't raised the way that we were, where you had to pick one and that's what you liked and that's what you stood behind. And I think people now, like younger generation, my girlfriend's little brother is now just turning 21 and he will literally drink anything in the world. I probably was like that at 21 as well. So I don't know, maybe we'll just see. The new generation, good for them. But the 21, I think the 21 also has a great mouthfeel to it, right? You could definitely tell that this has spent some time interacting with casks. A little tiny bit of smoke, but I feel like the smoke at the end is a lot less. But the more I drink Jura, the more I'm finding honey. There's a lot of raw honey, especially as you chew through the finish. Now I'm getting more honey on the front of my tongue, almost like the front third of my tongue than I was originally, or even if I try it again.
I think somebody pointed out the brininess on this one. I taste, to me, the nose is like salted meats.
The nose to me is like some
strong
type of, yeah, it's more like a dock, right? Like a dock or a pier in the ocean is the original nose that I get, right? Like if you could almost be on that wooden pier smelling the wet wood of the pier that's been dealing with not so much kelp, but definitely some of that ocean air.
For me personally, it's not even so much sea influence, ocean, but it's saltiness, like a meaty saltiness for some reason. Like a
savory almost, huh?
Yeah, like a basturma, like you know, like spiced meats that are yeah, like aged salted meat essentially. But you know, I spend more time with meat than I do on a pier. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Hollywood. I don't see the ocean ever. I think you and I live about as far away from the ocean as we can while living in California. While living in Los Angeles metro area.
So I could, this smell and the combination of everything. There's a place that my dad had, we had a schooner over at Long Beach where that bridge that lifts up and all that oil, the musk of like a captain smoking, and then you got all the diner that was on the dock. It's like all that coming into that nose for me. And then the
Oh man, what a great description there. Who here likes the 21? Is anybody, how about this? Who here has an issue with the 21, right? I like to hear about that, right? I generally enjoy hearing people who have things to say about it. Yeah, go ahead, please.
My issue is that there is only 1 ounce of it. I will need to buy more.
Well, if you ever find yourself in Los Angeles, I know a place or two that might have a bottle hidden behind the bar. In fact, I think I gave $7,000 a couple bottles for their anniversary. But I did maintain that, ladies and gentlemen, this should only be consumed in shot form as it is your anniversary. So let's make some bad decisions. I don't know if they followed through on that, but we'll see.
I agree with Vadim. I need one too, but I'm in Utah, so I don't have any connection.
Not too far. I really do like the 21. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. No, I was going to say, I find it interesting that when I first nosed it, it was like lemon blossom, like walking through an early spring orchard when they're just starting to pop and they're so strong, but it's faded quite a bit in just a couple of minutes I've had it in the glass. And now it's definitely got that salted lemon, almost Moroccan kind of flavor to it.
I like it's like almost a meringue is with it too, because all of that butteriness and that creaminess from all of that time in oak. I tried to explain it to someone is like, think of on the nose, this one to me was kind of like icing on a cinnamon roll, right? Like at first, like the creamy vanilla icing richness of that, but still with a little bit of pop from that.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Total Wine in Florida. We actually have a colleague of mine. I'm just saying, if you're down in Florida, we're looking for a new single malt specialist based out of Miami, as we just had one of my colleagues just got promoted up and he's moving to, of all places, North Carolina. So he left Florida. So filtration. I like to get this out of the way first and foremost, right? I did this with Drammers. I do this with everybody. We believe that chill filtering is the best way to filter single malt whiskey for us. It is about consistency. It's about shelf presentation. It's about making the single malt available to the other 99.9% of the people that aren't on necessarily this call or in whiskey clubs. I spent a significant amount of time in Asia opening bars and restaurants. And I know for sure that if I presented cloudy whiskey to somebody, I probably would have lost my job. It's a cultural thing, and we believe that chill filtering is what's going to bring us through. And that's exactly what we do, and we're very proud of the whiskey that we make.
So even the 46%, usually it's chill filtration under 46, but even the 21 at 46.7, you guys just consistency throughout all across the board.
Yeah, we want to make sure the bottle always looks the same, that the whiskey always looks the same, that if you put an ice cube in it, that it's always going to look the same type of whiskey from first drink, first bottle to if you go to Utah, right? From LA to Utah, that the bottle's always going to look the same all the way to Taiwan.
Sounds good. I thought the cloudy bottle was a hack.
The cloudy bottle is because when I was there, it was in the high 70s, and the Scots were melting. The people on Jura were melting, and I was enjoying myself. Obviously, there was tons of making fun of me, as I am the California person. So everyone wanted to make sure that the entire day before, like, ooh, you better bring your parka. And then we get there, and it's in the upper 70s, and I had zero sympathy for anyone that made fun of me the day before about being soft from California, because I can make it in 70s, not low 70s, but I could do 70s. So the first two were done to kind of show that Jura is capable of making a single malt that isn't necessarily enhanced, finessed by sherry. Well, take all of that and throw it out the window, because we're going to go into my 12-year next. And the 12-year is just that. This is the single malt from Jura that gets the benefit of being connected through White Mackay to the Dalmore. When the Dalmore, after the casks that we get from Gonzalez Baez are no longer going to be used, if we do send them back to get reseasoned, they're not going to be used at the Dalmore. They will be used at Jura or Tom Navulin or Feta Karen, which is another 2 distilleries that we have inside of our family. And the 12-year is a very, very familiar single malt to me. And I will tell you, as we nose and flavor this after that, where I kind of hold this on my back shelf. As you could tell, I'm very brand specific with what I have on my back shelf. There isn't a lot of room for anything else, but when we're done nosing and tasting this, I'll tell you where I hold this in my nightly. So the Jura 12 years in ex-bourbon, and then we like to say finessed in Oloroso sherry. Not necessarily the Methuselah Oloroso sherry or the 30-year-old Oloroso sherry that we might be used to from our, as you said, big brother at the Dalmore, but definitely getting Gonzalez Baez sherry. Now, Gonzalez Baez, for people who are not familiar, is the world's finest sherry bodega in Jerez, Spain. A lot of long-standing business partnerships between White Mackay and Gonzalez Baez. Please, if anyone has an opportunity to go out there, get a hold of me through Vadim. I will make sure that they give you a fantastic tour. Drinking beautiful sherry all day in the southern Spain sun is fantastic. So the 12-year at 80 proof, this one's coming in about $48, $49, $50. I'm finding it online for. This to me is the baby brother to the Dalmore 15. When I've said this before, the Dalmore 15 is my absolute favorite of the attainable expressions of the Dalmore, and the 12-year is my absolute favorite of the expressions of Jura. A lot of the same nose, a lot of the same palate, and a lot of the same finish. Medium roast coffee. I'm going to, you get some dates because of the Oloroso sherry. The only difference is whereas the Dalmore uses no smoke, this one will be a smoked date with some coffee. And then on the palate, I get vanilla and soft milk chocolate, stewed raisins. The coffee really comes front. And tell me if anybody here off the top of their head is familiar with the Dalmore 15, because I'd like to see, so please, do you feel that this and the Dalmore 15 are in the same, if not the same universe, they're on the same planet, and they're probably in the same city as far as I'm concerned. This one has a little more, its elbows are out a little bit more, I would like to say. It has a little bit bigger shoulders than the Dalmore 15, but when I don't feel like destroying my budget and being threatened to lose my job by finance, we're drinking Jura 12 on my budget, and it definitely fills that role.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing this one is missing that I always love in the 15 is that marzipan from the Palo Cortado, but the sherry is much more similar. The Methuselah, it's almondy, darker, not too sweet.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I always, when I talk about the Dalmore 15, I always say that it's got that slight nuttiness from the Apostoles, right? No Apostoles in this, right? However, I feel like it's more of an oily nut, right? Like this has a more of that, like you said, an oily nut. This definitely has a great mouthfeel for 12. There's a lot of other whiskeys inside of my portfolio that I'm not as fond of. I love everything we make, but for some reason, this 12-year-old for me is I love it so much.
I'm like
I
the
won't taste
total
like Raisinets,
opposite.
I love it.
I was gonna say, this is not my favorite of the three right now. I like the,
Really?
like, yeah, Journey is like my favorite right now.
Are you a sherry cask finish whiskey enjoyer?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I got
Yeah,
a
and
bunch
this
of
one,
scotch.
this one
Just
is this
comes
one
off green to me. I mean, even though it's a 12-year, it
really?
seems young. I don't know
Does it
why.
really?
Yeah,
Does it feel thin at all, or just young?
thin. I could place that. Yeah,
Cool.
I think if it was a
Yeah.
higher proof, I think it would probably be better for me. But then again, I like high proof stuff as well. So
Vadim, second time we're sitting in the same place, and I get the higher proof talk. I feel like you're not strange by saying that. I hear that on like a nightly basis, especially after Inf. There was a couple of us sitting around having some cigars, and other brand ambassadors were like, your whiskey just needs to be higher proof. I was like, yeah, let me call them up. Like, I'm sure
yeah.
Mike's going to call him up.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, Charlie from Drammers Club, who I don't know if you gentlemen know Charlie, or anybody, ladies and gentlemen, know Charlie from Drammers Club. He's absolutely a star, but he keeps asking me, when can I buy a cask of barrel proof Dalmore? And I was like, don't hold your breath, big guy. We'll get you there eventually, but just don't hold your breath right now. I love you, Charlie. Like, let's go have a beer.
Yeah, we just did a tasting with the Dalmore through Drammers last night.
Yeah, are you in the East Coast? You're in New York, huh? With Marlon.
I'm over. I'm in near Detroit, so they did the last hour of it virtually. Charlie
awesome.
brought his phone up, started streaming, and we just kind of drank together for the last I think about half the expressions they were going through.
So, interestingly enough, Craig, our national head of advocacy, hosted that event in New York with Marlon, my counterpart in New York, and they got to try some really, really interesting stuff. Hey, listen, they tried a 21, we're trying a 21. Don't let them tell you anything. We're both drinking 21s, all right? And he brought a 14 out, man. I brought out an 18 as well, so don't worry about that.
And we can get several of these 21s for the price of one of theirs, so.
You could probably right now get 4 of these 21s for the price of one of the Dalmore 21s. I know, I have a few of them back here. So,
and to be fair, give it a couple of months and you and I will do a Dalmore tasting and try the 21.
Oh, we'll do a Dalmore eventually, right? It'll be great. I actually have some big plans to talk to Vadim about doing a multi-ambassador tasting. I think that's going to be something cool that we're going to talk about coming up. Let's try and unleash all the 18s of all the big dogs at the same time, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So,
and remind me to talk to you about Tom Navulin since you brought that up earlier.
Tom Navulin is never going to hit California.
I saw tons of it when I was in Scotland, and I was like, this is a brand I've never seen in California. I'm like, how popular? They're like, yeah, we all drink it. It's good.
So Tam Navulin, we just went to the distillery. We're out there. Tam Navulin originally it's in Speyside. It's in the heart of Speyside, very, very close to the cooperage. And it originally was making single malts for blends. However, now everything they do is a multi-stage maturation, right? You can tell that there's a DNA running deep through the heart of the company that I am employed by, that we love our multi-stage maturation. And Tam Navulin is doing some really, really interesting stuff. If anybody can ever find Tam Navulin, it's definitely a competitively priced bottle with a lot of the Glens. So you're not going to definitely break the bank by investing in it, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Which brings us into the 18 year. The 18 is special because it's an 18. Maybe 10 years ago, 18s weren't as special as they are now, but now 18 seem to be the holy grail of single malt whiskey. Very recently, again, because of the huge levels of success that White Mackay is getting from specifically the Dalmore, and also Jura is growing at quite the clip too, we have started to reinvest back into Jura. And this bottle is manufacturer suggested retail price on the shelf at $99.99. You're going to see some bottles still priced in the 120. However, once they're through stock from a few months ago, you are going to find these bottles sub $100. A big thing that I talk to retailers about is I want this bottle on a shelf. I don't want it behind glass. I don't want it behind the counter. I want this accessible, and I want it next to my other single malts, because I feel like an 18 for sub $100 is exactly what I'm looking for. Trust me, I love $500, 18-year-olds. Everybody should, but I really like a $99 one better. 88 proof. So the 18 spends nearly all of its life being matured in ex-bourbon casks. After that, it goes into Cabernet Sauvignon Barriques. Again, you're going to start to see some similarities between what the Dalmore does, with the cigar malt being a finish in Cabernet Sauvignon. However, this one is no sherry, but directly into the red wine barriques. The 18 is very soft, very red berries, very tannic on the palate as well, and a little tiny bit of smoke at the end. I like this one for not quite dessert, but definitely when I'm finishing off a meal. If my entree is definitely a bigger dish, the 18 can no problems rub elbows with a bigger, heartier meat. The nose is definitely, excuse me?
Why was the ABV 44? Is there a certain reason for that?
Palate profile, right? Just that's something that probably distillers or Greg or Richard really chose for. This is definitely a Richard single malt. The 12 is a definite Richard single malt. This is a Richard single malt as well. You can definitely see the difference between Greg and Richard on the DNA of these. What does anybody get on the nose? Obviously, vanilla is going to be huge with the extended time in ex-bourbon.
Cherry Coke.
Cherry Coke, right? The red berries.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Dr. Pepper kind of smell.
Is Dr. Pepper just cherry Coke with one different flavor? I know they say there's a bunch of different flavors in it, but I spent some time in the South and I tried to get to the bottom of it.
It's prune juice.
It's prune juice that they add to it.
Yep.
I don't need any of that. Thank you so much. But cheers.
It was actually reminding me of, there's a cherry, I don't know if they still make it, there's a cherry vanilla Dr. Pepper. And actually it was reminding me of.
But the taste is like completely different. Like it's more, it's for me, I smoke a lot of meat and stuff, and this is like, I can totally drink this while I'm doing my barbecue right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm with you.
There's 3 single malts that we make for wide purchase, right? We won't get into Tom Navulin or Feder Karen, but 3 single malts made from White Mackay that do see time with red wine barriques. Again, a barrique is just a style of cask that they use in Bordeaux. That's the cigar malt, the King Alexander, and the 18. And the King Alex being something completely different from anything else that we make. I think that there's going to be a little bit of similarity between the Cigar Malt Reserve and the 18. Now, these are not interchangeable. However, I find that people, when I taste the 18 for them, if they are a big Cigar Malt Reserve fan, the 18 is standing right there for you waiting. Again, it's like I used to like to say, when I used to have a mustache and I'd shave my mustache off, my girlfriend's like, I feel like I'm cheating on my boyfriend. And I was like, yeah, you are, with a guy who doesn't have a mustache. It's the same boyfriend. I feel like the 18 is a very acceptable way for you to step out on your cigar malt regular date with something slightly different.
Yeah, I think they're the same flavors, but like this is the light version of that, and the cigar malt is the dark version. It's everything is the same, but one is just what cigar malt is what you drink in the bar that has the dimmed lights and the pad and the and the velvet and seating, and that's you're gonna just sit there in the dark and just kind of sit with your glass. And this is on the porch on a sunny day.
I love that. And and again, $100 is not the most approachable bottle of whiskey in the entire world. However, an 18-year-old for this price point, I like to use this when I have friends that come over, and it might be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have a little antifreeze in us, and they're like, "Ooh, look at all that stuff on the shelf. Can we have the slide out bottle of 25?" I'm like, "Hold on, wait. My friends start with 18 here, and it's Jura 18, because usually at 2 o'clock in the morning, no one needs other 18-year-olds that I can offer them." So I really think that the Jura 18 is not just that price adverse single malt. It is also something that's 100% worth the original $120 that we were suggesting. But at $100 right now, this is hot, and we're actually seeing a lot of traction with it. People are really starting to respond well to Jura 18. What does everyone else think? I know I've heard from a few. I've heard cherry cola, vanilla cherry Dr. Pepper, light side of the force cigar malt.
I was really surprised on the nose. I think Amanda really said it. It was like, it's very surprising. Moving from the 12 to the 18, I mean, I really got that the nose really started to come alive because of the cast finishing, I'm imagining. But in the 18, it really was candied. I mean, I forget, I don't know the name of the Jello that I remember. It's like when you're mixing in the water and you're about to make your Jello, it was like one of those things. It's like, it's that kind of smell that I got. But the taste on it is wonderful. I just keep thinking, what would these be like if they were not chill filtered and they had a little bit more of a mouthfeel to them, a little bit more, you know, of the just a little bit more of the fatty esters or whatever they are, and what that would be like. So the question, Mike, have you ever had any of these expressions before they've been filtered?
No, I have not. So when you do go to, you know what? None of these expressions. I have had Jura that hasn't been chill filtered. If you make it to the island, which I highly suggest, I know obviously travel is not for everybody. Traveling now in the economy is not for everybody. But if you find yourself out there, I suggest going to visit Jura. One, because you get to go through Isla and see a bunch of really cool things, but then you get to also end up at a place that's really hard to get to and get out of. And they love showing people off. I believe we had 1972 heavily peated, no wine cask, only ex-bourbon Jura from the cask. They put the copper dog in, pulled it out, and poured it into our little glasses. That was it was special. Like the older, and it definitely did have more of a satiny, you know, rich, complex mouthfeel. But I would always say, and I say this a few times, you know, White Mackay, that's a carrier. That's the largest carrier in the world. And turning that thing around is like turning around in the Suez Canal, right? For them to have eventually stopped chill filtering is going to be a fight that, you know, everyone's going to have to start voicing up and, you know, bringing up more and more often. Do I wish that none of my single malts used artificial coloring? Do I wish none of my single malts were chill filtered? Absolutely. However, you know, that's the plan for the day.
I will.
So what does everyone think?
That if you search for it, you will find it. I was able to find some cask strength expressions like your festival bottlings, still available in Europe, and I was able to try one when I was there. And it's fantastic. And Jura is
cool.
Out of White Mackay, it definitely seems like the playground one where there's, you know, port finish and this finish and that finish, and like a lot of different kind of experiments going on. They're having fun with it.
Yeah, the Dalmore is very serious. When you go to the distillery, very serious. Everybody who works there, very serious. When I give my presentations for the Dalmore, right, I'm in the most expensive suit that I could buy. I have the biggest pocket square that I possibly can, right? Like everything is very serious. And then when I get to do Jura, it's fun because I get to wear a regular shirt, right? Like I'm trying to talk them into t-shirts, but I don't think. However, the whole idea of the island is not very serious, right? When you go to the island, everybody's singing, everybody's having a good time. I mean, this is not, you know, the land of this is not the Lollipop Guild. I'm not saying that everyone's sitting there in hands, like locked in arms, singing the same song. But, you know, it's a very special place to live and a very special place to be. And I feel like if you came into the distillery very serious, it's not going to work, right? So it is a lot of fun. Also, the Dalmore or the Jura right now is the most popular single malt in the UK. So this is definitely, you know, we are drinking something that the rest of the world is definitely believing in. It's just that in the United States, the Dalmore is taking the lion's share of the focus from White Mackay, but the rest of the world is really starting to get behind Jura in a really big way, especially in the UK. So 18, are we fans? Are we surprised by it? Happy with it?
I'm a big fan. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like
love
this
that.
one.
Well, so this brings us into the one that is going to test the gentleman from Waukegan, Illinois' ability to say French words multiple times over. This is the Jura 7-Wood. This is pure Greg Glass. Greg being a European oak fanatic. This is his way of saying, guess what, everybody? This is what I do for a living. This is what I do very well for a living. And this is why Richard and White Mackay as a whole brought me in. The 7-Wood is, again, Greg kind of showing off by finishing and finessing his single malt in 7 or 6 different expressions of European wood. And let's all have fun with my horrible pronunciation of these French words. Now, if you can believe this, everybody, I used to work for cognac companies and I still say French words like this. So it starts its life off in ex-bourbon, right? Like every single one of our single malts. Then, very importantly, it goes into Limousin oak, right? The very tight Limousin oak, tight grain pattern used in cognac. We have the Trossé, Allier, Vosges, Jupiler, and La Bertrand. What does that mean? In the same way that when I try and describe King Alexander to people who've never tried it before, people think that it sounds like it's going to be busy, but where those are all wine casks and it brings to this something that's very refined and very, very not delicate, but refined and really easy. All of that time in those separate oak casks brought back together, I think makes what finishing for the night is something that has the least amount of sharp edges of everything that we make. This one is the most round of all of my single malts, in my opinion, that come from Jura that are regularly available. Again, slight smoke. No mistaking soft baking spices. The 7-Wood is beautiful. The 7-Wood is, I think, a fantastic way to bring you from virgin American white oak to our wine casks, now down to just European oak, and see that the difference that European oak has, right? The biggest difference between the American white oak and say Limousin is that Limousin has such a tight grain pattern that really what you're looking for is not the whiskey or the cognac or whatever spirit you're aging. Eau de vie is not to get so much into the wood, but to kind of sit with itself, right? That's where you get rancio from a lot of old cognac, because those old Limousin, it's not really allowing so much back and forth between the wood and the whiskey. Now imagine if you had a 100-year-old whiskey, like say Louis XIII is 100 years in Limousin oak. Imagine if we had American white oak for 100 years. That would be an absolutely insane, intense experience. But the Limousin, and especially the European oak with its tighter grain pattern, is going to mellow it out rather than give what the wood has to it. Price point, $75, and it's 84 proof. This one is, again, I hate to keep using smoked honey, but smoked honey, and this I feel like is probably the softest on the palate of everything that we tried today. What does everybody think of the 7-wood?
This is gonna sound a little weird, but I was really disappointed to see this in the tasting group because this was my first Jura and became one of my must-haves at all times on my shelf. So when I saw it in there, I'm like, oh great, I get to try something. I've got a bottle of sitting on my shelf, but
oh no.
This was just such an early. This was way early in my whiskey journey, and this is just such a great introductory to Jura, I think, and I think would be the perfect one to say here. Start with this, and see what you think. It's just an amazing dram. I love it.
Oh, that's a huge compliment. Yeah, the 7-wood is. I have a hard time finding too many faults with it outside of the obvious, right? It probably could be a higher proof. It could probably be non-chill filtered. However, I have a really hard time finding faults with it as Greg at Compass Box, right? Like everyone knows what Compass Box was doing 6-7 years ago. That was Greg. And Greg now with Jura, as like how Vadim said, these are the monkey bars, right? This is the distiller's dream to be able to have a relatively sizable distillery that there's nobody's going to interrupt you here, right? And if someone's going to interrupt you, you're going to know 2 hours before they get there because you're probably going to see the boat coming over the horizon. It's really fun to have him there, and the 7-wood is great. The thing I like to do with the 7-wood is that this is my highball of choice. I feel like if we use something like Q Mixer's soda water, like a really high quality soda water, and a lemon peel, squeeze that lemon peel after you fill it up. I always pour my single malt in first, ice cubes on top, and then I pour the soda water on top of that, because you kind of have a little single malt surprise down at the bottom. But then, especially if that lemon peel on top, because Jura has so much of that type of citrus in it, the lemon peel. But as we're talking about the Dalmore, every time I have a highball Dalmore, it's always an orange peel. But back to Jura, I enjoy the 7-wood. Vadim, what do you think? Happy? I saw a question.
Sorry, it's been a few weeks since we've done a tasting, so I'm catching up to the way we usually run things, and I'm remembering that I'm forgetting things. So I'm working in the background to throw a poll out, which I'm going to do now. And we still have to do our picture. So as soon as Ian comes back, we're going to do a family photo. So hopefully everybody saves a little sip for that.
I don't see all the questions that are in the chat, but I did see one that asked about Limousine Oak versus, I think it was a Limousine Oak versus American White Oak. American White Oak is so porous and so pliable that the reason everybody looks for the American White Oak is because you're getting a significant amount of chemical interaction between the wood pulling in the spirit and then pushing out the spirit. Whereas European oak generally leaves for lack of a better term, the American White Oak is more like a sponge, whereas the the European oak would be something less porous, and the tight grain pattern is going to allow for a little bit less of the whiskey going into the wood and then coming back out of it. I should do this right now.
Mike, I'm going to say this is the spice tree of Jura, because it reminds me of spice tree from Compass Box and a little bit of Hinduism like put together. So, and
this again, being Greg's like, pride and joy of the distillery, you're going to see a lot of that. And it's interesting too, when Vadim and I talk, we'll start tasting some cool stuff that he's really starting to influence from the Dalmore. But I feel like White and Mackay is really going to start going in. Again, Sir Richard Patterson's the greatest, right? He's the first whiskey showman. He's the nose. He knows a lot of stuff. He's extremely well respected. Wait till Greg comes in, because Greg's only going to add on top of all of the success that we have and really start to bring out some really interesting stuff. Oh, look at that puppy. Someone's wrote in the rugs, and it's that one right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. We got everyone back on camera. So I welcome everyone to turn on their camera if they're not on camera and grab a glass. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. I want to raise a glass. A cheers to you. Cheers to Jura and Mike. Thank you for being here tonight. Cheers to the group. Hey, John finally came on. Yeah, cheers to everyone. Got it.
Please send me that, will you?
Yeah, of course.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Anyone have any thoughts, questions, ideas?
I saw one thing. We didn't get a chance to taste it tonight, but I know that one of the new releases, I don't know if it's going to be in the US, is the 14 rye cask.
I did try the 14 rye cask when I was in Scotland. If that is coming out, I would say look at it for late Q4. If it is coming out, I was sampling people on the rye cask in Las Vegas at the Great American Whiskey Festival. It's great, right? It's fantastic. It's completely different, and I like what Vadim said, that it kind of feels like White Mackay has an experimental distillery. It's just really hard to get to. And I'll bring up another final point of Jura, the island. A majority of 1984 by George Orwell was written on that island. And George Orwell said that it was the most unget-outable place he's ever visited his entire life. If you ever have a chance to visit the distillery, the way that we visited is we drove up to Oban, and then we came down from Oban the entire length of the island and then came up to the bottom. And the first house you see is this house on a rock that is George Orwell's home that is still there. I'm sure someone's doing something awesome there, but yeah, that was too far up the island for me to go visit when we went on our hike.
Mike, what kind of production numbers is Jura doing, or do they have a really good supply? You're saying that Jura is known in Europe and is having a little bit harder time getting traction in the US. How are your Asian markets? Are you there? Because usually they're huge fans of Scotch. And then Jura, does it have the production to kind of keep up, which what I'm sure is going to be huge success?
We have a huge amount of stock laid down and are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So as a lot of distilleries on Isla aren't running 24/7, Jura is running 24/7 to create enough product to really be its own, right? Like to step out into its own. How is Jura in the Asian markets? Jura is not picking up in Taiwan as much as, say, the Dalmore is. But I can still rest assured, and this might be some breaking news for everybody, White Mackay's #1 market is the United States of America, right? Period. White Mackay just broke ground on doubling the Dalmore's production. So the Dalmore is going to be producing, granted that's 4 years from now. Hopefully the trends stay up to where they are across single malt in general. But Jura, outside of regional ordering from specific, importers, distributors, I feel like Jura will be far more than approachable and, available. Something that we're trying to go for is saying that we want to be the craft alternative to the Glens. We have a smaller footprint. We have the Glens have beautiful stories. They're all great single malt whiskeys, right? Like I have a bottle of Glenlivet and Glenfiddich, and I also have a bottle of Glenmoe above my refrigerator. This is being recorded. I didn't say that, prank caller. However, the Dalmore is trying to offer something that is slightly different in the same price point, and if we're not completely beating them at their price point. And we're lowering the cost of our 18s, right? Like our 18 has gone down $30, $20, $40 in the last couple months. It's not being doubled and tripled like even other things that I have sitting behind me. And in case everybody hasn't seen it, right before we get off real quick, you guys check this one out. It's different, but look at the new 21 box. Ooh, the new 21.
Do they all come half empty? Because that's
it's kind of crazy, right? Like I was trying to talk to the guys at Mission, and I was like, "Why is this coming half empty?" They're like, "That's the way."
It's like potato chips.
Okay.
It just ships better.
I was concerned about that. Yeah.
This one's not. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being great.
Well, Mike, before you head out, we did a poll, as you saw. Everybody voted. What do you think was the group's favorite expression of tonight?
I think everybody's favorite was the 7-wood.
You're close. The 7 wood is really good, but the favorite tonight was the 18.
18.
Yeah,
I
53%
love
voted 18 year, 24% voted 7 wood, and then 18% voted 21.
And then
Interestingly enough,
the entire field.
After the 7 wood, I went back to the 21 and it was a lot more smoky.
Was it really? So the 21 starts off smoky and then completely loses everything to me except for vanilla bean, right? Like creamy vanilla bean after like my second and third. So I'm gonna have to revisit these as I don't have to drive tonight. It's Friday, and I get to see. Unlike a lot of people in the world, for people who work for alcohol companies, we actually go to bed early Fridays and Saturdays because it's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that we stay out late. So I'll be able to try as much 21. I would like to see that on the nose at least. Where's everybody located?
I added some water that's 21 in
Burbank. Vadim is in. You're in what? Bellflower now?
Yeah. Yep.
Burbank.
That's his house.
Ogden, Utah.
Yeah, we got some Utah. We got some Jason. Where are you at?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Minnesota. Wyoming for Justin. Welcome back, Justin.
Youngstown.
The other Jason.
Silmar.
There you go.
Nice.
Jason, is Jason Souter? Where are you at?
Outside Detroit.
He's outside Detroit. There you go. How's the water?
Oof.
Is that still a thing?
Oof.
No, it's not being a thing.
Anna and Adam are in Seattle, one of my favorite cities.
There you go. Ian is in Ohio, I believe. So we're all over the place.
I love this. Toluca Lake. Yeah, dude, that's the best part of North Hollywood.
Well, yes, of North Hollywood. And it wants to be Burbank, but it's not.
Yeah.
Oh man. What is it? Is it like it's gonna be like 140 degrees in the valley this weekend, right?
It was ridiculous today.
Well, I was in San Antonio last week, or no, earlier this week at 105 and 90-degree humidity, 90% humidity every day. So
I'm right in like East
101
Hollywood.
out.
Oof, I'm like right in East Hollywood. We get up to like mid. I'm like Thai Town, Little Armenia, like Western and Sunset. And my poor girlfriend wants it to be like 82 degrees in our apartment, and I want to live at like 64 degrees. And it's funny how those people always find each other.
yep.
And
All
then
right,
this
Tony,
guy
rub
he
it
just
in.
wants to lay in the sun all day. This is my little rescue that I got from the pound a couple of years ago. He used to be a street dog in Mexico. And
Oh,
he is just
He looks like a thug. Street
he's
dog
just
in Mexico.
as he's giving me a hug, he's just the happiest. He smells like Fritos. So it's time to give this guy a bath.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Mike. It's been really amazing. We appreciate you spending the evening with us. We hope to have
Yeah, I
you
love
back
it. Thank you so
soon
much.
for another one.
We'll do a Dalmore soon. Let's chat offline. Maybe grab a drink sometime soon. We're not too far away from each other, and then we'll talk about some fun Dalmore stuff the next time too.
For sure. Everyone, do not log off. As soon as we finish the recording, which will be in another 10 seconds, I got a couple of really unique Jura samples to give away. So hang out. So thank you, everyone, and this concludes our recording.